I've been flying the last 2 summers at Skydive, Iowa. My main requirement for jobs for many years has been I must not work on the Sabbath or Saturday because I love Jesus and I want to honor him in all I do. He commands us in the Bible to keep the Sabbath day, not to work on the 7th day, but to work 6 days. As you guys know, aviation business is a booming business, mostly on the weekends. So that is where businesses have the most need for you as a pilot. Making this Sabbath a rule for pilots limits many opportunities for many flying, and therefore military and airlines can be difficult to navigate. Pretty much out of the question for a pilot that doesn't work on the Sabbath. So Skydive, Iowa was my first flying job after school. For many years, I knew that mission aviation was an option, a hard life, but an option. I was like, it wasn't my first choice. I had my eyes on the airlines. I had training costs to pay back in the hundreds of thousands. I knew with a little grit and perseverance, I'd eventually find that perfect position that I've always been looking for. After graduation, I was applying, networking, searching, and traveling for jobs. As time went on, I got odds and ends just to keep the money coming in. I was broke. I worked in a deli in a local grocery store. I was a driver picking up people from airports and bus stations and train stations for my school. I was a mover driver for 2 men in a truck. I was an assistant at a funeral home in Niles. That was really interesting. I had a wish that once I found that flying job, I would just go hard and fly like all the time. Just wake up, fly, eat, fly, do that type of thing. Jobs came and went, and it seemed like I wasn't getting closer in my aviation goals. It was discouraging. I went for an interview with a peer who was a CFI. He was actually in a class below me, but he was a CFI at the time, and he was a hard worker, got stuff done, and worked for a well-paying air photography type imaging place. I had not been flying for a bit, and I even went for the interview, flew for like 6 hours, got signed off in the Piper Warrior. So I was pretty confident that I had the job. I waited for a call back and ended up not getting the position after quitting my job. So that was rough. I was so confident that I had the job in the bag that I quit my job, and I eventually realized that the market in Michigan was not prime for me, and that I had no room, that the market in Michigan had no room for me. So I moved back home and searched for work. Almost within the first month, I had like 2 jobs, and I was waiting for the background check to finish for the 3rd job. And I was driving for a baggage delivery service. That was the first job that I walked in the office, pretty much got it straight. And I was also working for Hertz as a transporter, pretty much driving the dirty cars from the airport to the cleaning place, and driving the clean cars from the mechanic shop or whatever back to the airport. I began working for Allegiant as a 3rd job, as a ground operations agent and a customer service agent. That had like random hours. I'd work maybe 5 hours split throughout the day. And throughout that time, I put in some times for the airlines, and I was hoping that would be the way I could get my foot in the door. A year and 6 months later, I didn't see my pay going up. I saw coworkers come and go. It seemed like the work lost that honeymoon period that I had in the beginning, so I just wasn't feeling it. I was late at times. I really wasn't enjoying it that much, and it didn't seem to me like I was getting too much closer to the cockpit job that I was searching for. Besides, when I was servicing the forward lavatory, actually, at times I did feel close to the cockpit, and that was usually when I was servicing the forward lavatory on the airplane. And I was getting fecal juices on me. Put my foot down and decided to step out in faith, believing that I would get a flying job. So I went to, I think, the Iowa City Airport, went for the first part of my flight review. Every 2 years as a pilot, you need a flight review, make sure you got them flying skills up on point. And since I was out of the flying game for so long, I just did like 8 hours of ground. And ground is pretty much studying the text. So looking at the FAR, flying aviation, federal aviation regulations, and getting part 91, part 61, some of the other parts to memory, memorizing the rules and regulations that affect you as a pilot. And of course, just general aerodynamics, and just making sure you're up to point. So I got 8 hours of that done in Iowa City. Then I went to the Ankeny Airport and got my flying done. It was pretty much just an hour of flying, and I did some more ground over there. You don't use it, you will lose it when it comes to aviation knowledge, so got that done. But ironically, I mean, nothing funny about it, but I'm just proud of this moment. While I was in Iowa City, I talked to a guy who is leaving Skydive Iowa to go fly for like a charter company. So he pretty much got out of there, and I got into this flying job. It seemed like 2 weeks later, I was starting to fly for Skydive Iowa. And going from no flying to like all types of flying, it was just like a dream for me. Just like you get up in the morning, fly till the evening. So that's pretty much been my career up until now. I did have a little flight instructor stint that I had for about 2 months. And in that 2 months, I learned all kinds of things about teaching students, pretty much the basics of, how to keep the plane straight and level. Had some good experiences, had some scary experiences. One time on an approach for landing at the local airport, or at the home base airport, I should say, had a student try to flare for landing about 50 feet above the ground. Now, flare is pretty much what you see birds doing before they come into land. They kind of pitch up and they slow down, kind of usually when they're flapping, but in airplanes, we don't really flap the wings. We do flap the wings. We have flaps on the rear part of the wings just to slow our descent and increase drag and lift. But in this case, it was more drag at the time. So imagine you have flaps on, you're coming into land, and usually you try to flare maybe a foot or two above the ground to slow your descent and transfer the lift from the wings and dissipate the lift from the wings, and put the weight of the airplane from the wings to the landing gear. Anyways, so I had this young man flare about 50 feet above the ground when you normally try to do it maybe a foot or two off the ground, 5 feet, 10 feet. So usually when you flare that high, the wing stops flying, you lose lift, and you may drop like a rock. So pretty much what happened in that situation is the flare began to happen. I was like, nope, don't do that. I'm not sure if I talked him through the landing or if I took over at that point, but I survived. I did not die that day. So that's been my career up until now. After the flight instruction, I went back to Skydive Iowa, finished up that summer. I'm currently on the journey to finding my next position. I see if the Lord's calling me more for mission aviation. Seems like I was not running all this time. It wasn't my first choice, and I was like, if I had to do mission, I would. Just saying, like, if it became hard getting a aviation job and that was like my last choice, well, you know what? Life has happened that way. I've applied for all kinds of aviation jobs. It just seems like mission aviation is opening its door for me, and the other ones have either closed their doors. Let me not say close the doors, because Skydive Iowa, I think they would still take me at this time. It's just I'm in Arizona. It's quite the drive back to Iowa. But it seems like it's working out for me to do mission aviation. I find the Lord is calling me into that arena. So that's what's happening. On the 14th of February, I'm supposed to have a call, Lord willing, with Mr. Gary Roberts talking about the opportunities. So stay tuned. This is a long rant of mine, but I just wanted to put my aviation journey out there. Some of you will have faster journeys. Some of you may have slower journeys, but just keep on going, keep pushing, be bold, have that grit. And God bless. Comment, like, subscribe. If you have any questions about different things I've done in my life, just put in the section below. Thanks for watching.